Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. If there's one thing the last episode of The Mandalorian gave us was plenty of beautiful fleet shots. There's something that they've really figured out that makes these ships look so good, and honestly, I just can't get enough of it. With that being said, I thought we would take a second to really break down the potential strength of the Mandalorian fleet. And I mean, that's probably going to be important given the fact that it seems like they're going to be facing some challenges in the next episode. So the way I'm going to do this is I'll break down each specific ship type, starting from large, the Imperial light cruiser, and moving all the way down to Fang fighters. Then we'll talk fleet composition, the type of enemies they could expect to be successful against, the type they would struggle against. You probably get the idea. Alright, starting with their flagship. The Mandalorian fleet is anchored by Moff Gideon's former light cruiser. Now, as you probably know, this ship looks a lot like an Arquitens class command cruiser, or an Imperial command cruiser it was sometimes called during the Galactic Civil War. However, the sizes here don't quite match up, and that's most evident in the finale for Mando Season 2 when you can see the shuttle crashing through the pronged mouth. A shuttle would not fit there on an Arquitens, and specifically, we know that Gideon's light cruiser is a Class 546 variation on the Arquitens. Now, this model has increased size. It's 381 meters versus 230, and presumably it also has increases in shield generation, weapon power, and more. We know specifically in regards to differences other than size, the Class 546 also has additional engines. We do see some features in Mando Season 2 which I don't think are going to be super relevant. For example, there's a Dark Trooper launcher pod. Would be cool to see Mandos pop out of those, but I don't know. Additionally, it does have an internal hangar bay. However, that's kitted out for TIE fighters. I don't think the Mandalorians have anything in there, at least right now. Weapon-wise, the 546 has 4 quite large-looking quad laser cannons. I'm guessing specifically that these are turbo lasers, which are high-yield weapons meant mostly to engage other capital ships. You really get a good look at the size of those guns as the ship is landing in the most recent episode, but it's also possible the 546 did have some small point defense cannons, but we haven't seen any yet. Moving down in size, the next ship used in the Mando fleet is the Gazanti. Now, this has been identified as a heavy assault version of the Gazanti, and regarding differences, we can use the brand new Gazanti model in the Bad Batch to take a look at the differences. For one, the upgrade Imperial Remnant model has more cannons, including a heavy one in the front and back. Additionally, it does seem to have a bit more armor. There may also be some smaller point defense laser cannons, but again, these are some pretty heavy weapons. They're going to be less effective against fast-moving starfighters, but will have a decent shot against comparably sized ships, or at least contribute damage to larger ones. The Gazanti, however, was really well known for its transport capabilities. I mean, that's why they're rating it in the episode The Heiress, but we've seen them drop off heavy walkers. Obviously, they can transport supplies or individuals, so that adds some definite flexibility to the fleet, and we can see, as I'll get to in a moment, that there are a ton of Gazantis sitting around. Alright, moving down in size though, we have below the Gazanti, the Comric class transport, more commonly known as the Gauntlet. This is the ship that we've seen Bo-Katan flying around all throughout the season. The Gauntlet is actually massive, and it's not a proper starfighter. That's probably why we see Bo-Katan, I don't want to say struggling with it, but having to use it carefully in her battles against snub fighters. The Gauntlet was 52 meters long. In comparison, that's about 1/3 the length of a Rebel blockade runner. However, it does have a decent amount of firepower, including, as we saw as it took down the pirate Corsair, missile launchers, 2 forward cannons, and also 2 rear cannons. Additionally, and this isn't really obvious if you don't watch the scene very carefully, the Mando fleet also does have a collection of Fang fighters. Where the Comric is more of a transport hybrid, Fang fighters were truly space superiority fighters. I'm just going to go ahead and read the description on StarWars.com. The starship of choice for the Mandalorian protectors of Concord Dawn, the Fang fighter was a formidable craft. It was tailor-made for combat, featuring wing-mounted laser cannons and a hidden proton torpedo port in its belly. Its pivot wings provided a vector thrust control, allowing it to make turns of which few ships are capable. In order to handle such a ship, the legendary Fen Rao personally trained all Fang pilots. In battle, it was hard for any fighter to match the protectors and the Fang. And yeah, you may not have actually noticed these guys in formation with the fleet. They're definitely there though. They're smaller versions, much smaller, of the Gauntlet, and the most most notable way to tell the difference other than size is to look at the nose. If it extends past the little divot in the wings, it's probably a gauntlet. If not, probably a fang fighter. The Mandos obviously really needed these because, as I've been mentioning, most of their other vessels aren't great at anti-fighter duties. The larger ships especially, kinda surprisingly, seem to be missing point defense cannons, and I've said before, I really wish this show had kept the Pirate Corsair and given it to Din Djarin to add to the fleet. Just would have been one different looking ship. It would have had a different function. That, of course, has anti-starfighter weapons, and it may have come with a few snub fighters. I will say, one thing I'm a little disappointed about is that the Mando fleet is so homogeneous. Like, you'd expect that Mandalorians who have been keeping themselves to bounty hunting wouldn't necessarily have the cash to go about and make a truly Mando aesthetic fleet. I would have preferred them to have just a mix of cheap fighters, Z95s, whatever larger ship they can get as a launch platform. Anyway, when looking at the composition of the Mando fleet, I notice, of course, one single light cruiser, several Gazantis, and the remainder being a mix of gauntlet and fang fighters. I mean, you gotta work with what you have, but individual Gazantis seem especially under danger here in this scheme. Regarding specific ship count, when they're leaving Navarro, we see one light cruiser, 5 Gazantis, about 7 to 8 gauntlets, and what I'll just call a squadron of fang fighters. And the reason why I say the Gazantis are probably going to be a bit vulnerable is because there's just simply not enough fighters to go around. This is especially true because the Mandalorians actually detach ships from their fleet on the way to Mandalore. When they arrive, they only have 4 Gazantis, 6 gauntlets, and for my count, about 9 fang fighters. My guess is that these other ships have gone to get reinforcements. But 9 fang fighters to protect 5 ships, it's kind of a tough look, although it's possible the Arquitens does have some within its hangars. Additionally, the gauntlets, yes, can help with starfighter screening, but it's really not their intended purpose, so just keep that in mind. I also wonder whether Din's N1 might be inside one of the ships. Either way, the fleet obviously has that vulnerability, though they are actually not badly suited for fighting larger ships. Could this fleet take down a Star Destroyer? I mean, maybe if it had no escorts and TIE fighter complement, yeah. Otherwise though, for smaller foes, this fleet is pretty flexible. The Corsair would have added even more flexibility, treat it like a gunship or a corvette, have it actively screening against fighters. That would have been good, but you know, they don't have it, so I don't know why I keep talking about it. Anyway, that's a basic breakdown of the fleet's strength and capabilities. Again, some unknown information. For example, I had to guess at the armament of the Imperial light cruiser. It's possible that these things right here are extra cannons. I just don't quite know yet. But let me know your thoughts on that and more down below.